Welcome. My name is Karen Butter and I'm president of the Friends of the Alameda Free Library. The Friends supports the library through financial contributions for its programs and advocates for the library with elected officials. We are also assist with capital campaigns for new or expanded facilities. So thanks to many of you who continue to donate to the Friends so that we were able to honor our commitment to the library. As many of you know, we have sponsored a number of face-to-face events in the past. Unfortunately, we have had to cancel events such as the spring book sale and close the Dewey's Cafe. We miss the opportunity to get together with our friends and supporters, but our first priority is the safety of those who attend the events. So the board decided to move some of the events to a virtual format to stay connected with you and to share common experiences. This is our first Friends at Home event, and we thank you for attending and experimenting with us. Following my introduction, I will turn the meeting over to our speaker, Helen Harris. She will talk and read from her book. We invite you to submit questions through the Q&A function on your screen, and Helen will answer them following her talk. I will introduce the speaker in a moment, but first some technical instructions about the webinar itself. This is a live webinar. All audience members are muted by the moderator. At any time, you may ask a question through the Q&A button on your control panel. If we receive more than one question on the same topic, we will combine them. When Ms. Harris has finished the presentation, one of the moderators will read audience questions to her for her answers. This is our first ever webinar. We have practiced, but please be patient with us. We are far from experts with the software. Now I will introduce our speaker. Helen Joyce Harris lives and works in Alameda with degrees from Stanford and the University of Montana, as well as teaching credentials from Cal Berkeley. She has made a 41-year career of writing and teaching. She taught secondary school English in Alameda for 22 years and taught writing at the college level in Colorado, as well as here in the Bay Area. She has published in many periodicals and has helped half a dozen other writers' books into publication. Visible Means of Support is her first novel. So the Friends of the Alameda Free Library is pleased to welcome Helen as the very first of our authors to make a virtual appearance. Take it away, Helen.
Well, hello. Very exciting. Lovely to be here. Thank you. Thank you, Friends of the Library. Thank you, Karen Butter. Thank you, Karen Manuel. Thank you, David Beal, who have been getting this going. Here's my book. It's published by Wheatmark, and it's been out since late December of last year. I'm not going to literally read from these pages. What I've done is to type them onto here just for the ease of presentation. So I'll first give you a little summary of the plot of the book, briefly. In 1987, young Oakland resident Adam Fisk, 21, Caucasian, only child from college-educated parents, is arrested and pleads guilty to conspiracy to deal cocaine. He is sentenced to a 5-year federal prison term under the 3 strikes rule, which gave judges little latitude in sentencing. Adam's mother, Ginger, is divorced from his lawyer father, Ben, and Ben has a new family and lives out of state. Ginger is a high school English teacher in Oakland, and she and Adam conspire to keep this truth about his situation from everyone, neighbors, colleagues, but most especially from Adam's grandmother, Ginger's mother. That person's name is Alice Hotter. She lives out of state in Colorado Springs. I'm going to be reading from 3 different sections of the book. And the first one is from the point of view of Alice. There are 3 points of view in the book. This is from the grandmother, Alice, in Colorado Springs. And this occurs in chapter 5. Let's see, Alice, a widow in her 70s, she volunteers once a week at the local hospital gift shop in Colorado Springs, and we find her there. A rather unkempt young couple arrived, and Alice pretended she was through sorting the greeting cards so she could return to her station behind the counter in case they needed help, she told herself. But really, it was to let them know she was watching in case their purpose were to shoplift. Of these 2 customers, the girl was the shabbier. The natural curl in her light brown hair had been ratted into bulky, frizzy braids whose collection of dust and motes of this and that seemed marks of honor to the skinny thing. Her jeans were several sizes too big, and her pale yellow buttoned shirt was neither ironed nor tucked in. Maybe they were from Colorado College. The drugs that went on over there were truly appalling. Or at least that's what Doris had whispered to her last fall at Stiles Hall when they'd waited for the annual history lecture. The Swedish pungent smells wafting off the students' clothes had prompted Doris to declare under her breath, "Marijuana! This whole campus is rife with it. I hear it as well as with other drugs." The girl was now clinging to the boyfriend's shoulders and crying into the sleeve of his t-shirt, the back of which cataloged some singing group's whole performance history. Most everything in this shop was probably out of their price range, unless, this could certainly be true, unless he was a dealer in some of these drugs, someone with, what was the phrase? No visible means of support. The young man picked up a bear figurine, one that she too had admired, a good fist-sized replica of a massive brown bear, the kind that was said to live behind her own Broadmoor Manor in the folds of Cheyenne and Bear Creek Canyon. The bear was in mid-step, and even in its diminutive hugeness, it was graceful, flowing, its mouth a fixed curve almost like a smile. Perhaps this couple's hospital patient was a male, maybe the boy's grandfather. The youth advanced to the cash register and with excessive care set the bear down on the glass counter. His face looked grave. The waifish girl joined him, putting her arm around his waist. He pulled from his worn jeans pocket a surprisingly large roll of bills, peeling off 2 20s. "Counting the tax, the total is $21.30, she said briskly, looking only at her own age-spotted hands, her gnarled fingers flashing her new coral polish job and John's diamonds. Where had this youth gotten that kind of money? Would any place in town employ someone looking like he did? She doubted it. This was probably drug money she was handling. And wherever this bear was going, ICU, heart unit, would family members up there feel as she did about this couple, their appearance, and their lifestyle? That's Alice. Next, I'm going to read from the point of view of the young man, Adam. It's Alice's only grandson. This is from chapter 10. I need to explain a little backstory about this. Adam has now been in the federal prison in Texarkana, Texas for just a few weeks. But he's been sent to the hole for 30 days because he got into a physical fight with an older Aryan Nation inmate named Mosier. As the guard was locking on his cuffs just before this scene I'm going to read, Adam's older cellmate Les had slipped a paperback and some notepaper under his arm, and in solitary, Adam has had absolutely nothing to do, so he had finally tried Les's book. After a couple of false starts, he got hooked and finished it. It was East of Eden by John Steinbeck. He then wrote his mother asking for more books. Some days go by. This is now the 8th day of being in the hole. On the 8th day, when Carlisle, the guard, walked him back from Friday's shower, in the cell north of his, he saw a bandaged head and a long, thin, dark arm, very still. So after the guard took Mosier to the shower, he cleared his throat and sent over a, "Hey." "Hey." The guy had a really deep voice, almost like a growl. "Hear me?" He moved onto the floor near their common wall. Fisk, Adam. "Alphonse Wright, from Berkeley, California." The guy talked slow. You heard of it, probably." "You shitting me?" "Oakland." "No way." The voice moved closer. "You in here for?" "Fucking fight." "You?" "Protective thing. 2 DC whites held me down in the gym while the 3rd bashed on my head with a 45-pound bar." "Jesus." "Been in the infirmary 6 days." "What happened?" "Racial thing. It's different here, I guess, than in California. Head hurts like crazy. My glasses got pulverized. Not that they'd fit over this bandage. I mainly been keeping my eyes closed. How long you down here?" 30, done 8. "I got 100 days. Those 3 been sent out somewheres, but there's more where they came from." "Yeah, I think I met a couple. The guy in cell 5, for one." White space. Even the silences, even the nights were better with Alphonse close by. They talked mostly during the long hours after dinner, him sitting with his back against the bars. Carlisle pretty much left him alone. It was strange that Alphonse hadn't been put in cell 3 with empties to either side. Alphonse talked so quiet. He'd say once in a while, as Adam told about Christie, the bail mess, all of it. As a high school sophomore, Alphonse had broken league records in the 220 and 440. His coach had talked about a scholarship, maybe UCLA, but his junior year, Latasha had turned up pregnant, had an abortion. They'd broken up after that, and he'd begun using and selling. "How long's your sentence, Wright?" 10 years. I'll be 30 when I get out of here, if my head stays whole that long. Then he slid over one of those long, dark chuckles. All of a sudden, 5 didn't sound half bad. I'd have gotten 10 years too if I hadn't had Pamela Curtis as my lawyer. If you's my color, Holmes, lawyer or no, you'd have gotten 10. Another white space. Every day he stretched, did push-ups and crunches, ran in place. "Some track meet about to happen?" Alphonse chuckled. "Olympic trials?" Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10, he got roof time right after Mosier. Alphonse went next, even though Alphonse could only walk around and look at the sky. He read Alphonse a few parts of East of Eden, but it was hard to explain. Mostly they talked about the Bay Area, about Christie, Latasha. 11 days after he had requested them, the books he had asked for from his mother came on his tray along with the fried fish. He pulled the paperbacks out of the padded envelope. Cody's books, the envelope said. He'd been in that store with his mother. Huge old place. Everywhere you looked, someone, old, young, suits, hippies, wheelchairs, draped over some kind of book. Alphonse? What? The books arrived. About time. Wish I had my glasses back. You could lend me one. Well, here's my idea. His face felt hot from how embarrassed he felt. I was thinking maybe I could just start, like, reading aloud. Yeah. He traced the feel of the top book with his hand. It was so clean and new. Go ahead. Shit. I ain't doing nothing. He felt suddenly shy. I got this one here by John Steinbeck. The cover says it's an archetype. Could have fooled me. Go ahead and try it a little. So he folded back the first pages one at a time until he got to the prologue. To the red country and part of the gray country of Oklahoma, the last rains came gently, and they did not cut the scarred earth. The plows crossed and recrossed the rivulet marks. He got disgusted. Same's his other book. Too much landscape. So, most books take time to get going. Teacher told me that once. He read until 10 when the lights went out and started up after their showers the next morning and read all that day and right through dinner. His voice gave out then, but he read anyway in a hoarse whisper. They would be taking him back upstairs sometime tomorrow. It must have been about 9:30 when he finally finished. The ending did not exactly make sense to him, not to Alphonse either. Bared her breast? Is that what it said? Yeah, what do you make of that? Not sure. Weird. I like that Tom Joad, though. What was it he said? Get to thinking a lot when you ain't moving around. I like this the best. He opened to that page which he had turned down. I'll be in the way guys yell when they're mad. What'll happen to Tom, do you think? Probably dead already. He was in a mess of trouble for sure. Sad old book. I liked it, though, a lot. You? Sure as shit did, Fisk. I'll be keeping it in my mind now. That's how books do for me. I'll keep it in this big old hurty head of mine. Third character is Ginger, Adam's mother, Alice's daughter. She's in her mid-40s. She teaches English to 11th graders at a high school in Oakland. This is from chapter 1. Little backstory. First of all, she didn't get much sleep the night before because Adam had a phone call had wakened her up. A senior has transferred in at the semester because he flunked a semester of junior English. He's new to her class, and he's a basketball luminary headed for the pros. But all the attention from the recruiters has caused him to feel invincible, and he creates a scene in her class. Starting. Janelle Banks careened in, athletic shoes squealing, a calculated half-minute after the tardy bell. He folded his long frame into the desk nearest the door, slumped low in his seat, and basked in the usual adoration. At her desk, she forced a smile as she took roll, winning what converts she could while he rested. He did have charm, that liveliness in his dark eyes. She paused at the front of each row to collect last night's essays. Janelle, as usual, had none. summarizing a little bit here. She takes roll, gets the class underway by beginning to read aloud from their current text, The Great Gatsby. Janelle interrupts her. You won't accept my work? His legs reached clear across the aisle. She wondered where his mother found jeans that long. Even Adam had been hard to fit. Certainly, Janelle. Her temper felt warm and clean. Hand it to me, please. The room grew too quiet. His penciled script covered a scant half page. She should simply add the paper to the class pile and let him think he had won. But instead, she jerked open her top drawer, savoring the bouncy sounds the rulers and pencils made, found a functioning red tip marker and wrote at the top, late, no credit. She held it up for the whole class to see, then crumpled it, dropping it into the metal wastebasket. Exaggerating her casual pose on the edge of her desk, she read from the text, temples pounding, and then turned out the light. His house had never seemed so enormous to me as it did that night. Janelle lunged out of his seat, crossed to the wastebasket, knelt, and plucked out the wadded paper. She was awed by his grace, his physical perfection. I'm showing Miss Easton. He turned to the class. Listen to this. Gatsby's crimes were made necessary by a bad federal law, prohibition. We're making the same mistake now with our so-called illegal drug laws. Self-indulgent adolescent rhetoric. Even when she stood, he loomed almost a foot above her. You are out of line, Janelle. Sit down, please. Too late, she realized she had left him no way to save face. What? He boomed, his eyes huge, his arms wild. What the fuck? He leaned hard on the last word. A thrilled gasp came from several girls in the back. He was already returning to his desk. Go ahead, he said, packing his books. Write me up. My very thought. More lost minutes. She grabbed a blank discipline referral and wrote, furious. Argumentative and defiant, does no work in class or out. It sounded vague. She checked his row in her grade book, strung with Fs. Appears determined to flunk English 3 again. Action desired, the slip asked. Suspend from class for 2 days. The words seemed to take forever to write down. Janelle, meanwhile, had time to fill. His back to her, he chatted up a few of the hipper males on his side of the room. You guys go last night? 2 kegs. What a blast. She dated and signed the form. It was hella bad. Grass, blow. A few glanced her way. Was he trying to impress the juniors? Cocaine was so expensive. She handed Janelle the slip. He grabbed it, glowered back at her, and headed for the door. The defeat was one too many. She had lost him for 2 more days, had lost third period's goodwill, at least for a while. Blindly, she searched for the passage she had been reading. But from some place underneath her tight throat, words forced their way up and out. You guys, remember me. Remember school. Even Ibrahim and Ronald were averting their eyes the way they always did when a lecture was hatching. I want you to learn to think. Look at Jay Gatz, face down in a swimming pool because he couldn't own his reality. Don't you see what these substances do to people? A sick pit of silence stretched back, way back, to long before Adam's arrest. The tears right behind her eyes were a wall. My only son. Her heart pounded as the thrill of the release of the secret approached. My son is in prison from dealing these filthy drugs. It was only then that Janelle Banks closed the classroom door and pivoted into the world with her revelation, leaving her locked inside with her latest mistake. Done.
I want to thank Helen for a very inspirational reading, and I think we're all interested in what happens to all of the characters as well. I do have a few questions for you. It's about your background research for the book, and how did you do the background research? Where did you get all the information? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I can, yes, I can. This book was begun in the mid-'80s and finished by the mid-'90s, effectively finished. And it is a product of all of me, my imagination, my own experiences, research, interviews, hearsay, so that's one answer. It's certainly got a great deal of me in it, but it is very different from my own life.
And was there a specific inspiration for your stories?
Yes. My story, I think, was motivated out of a desire to study the dangers of pride. The way pride traps us. I'll say a couple more things about that. I was teaching here in Alameda. I took a leave for 2 years and went to the University of Montana to get a degree in creative writing. And my book was a good part, this novel was a good part of what I did up there. But my teacher, Bill Kittredge, a brilliant, wonderful teacher, he would say to our seminar, he said, you have to write about what you can't write about. You have to write about the things you don't dare write about, because that's why people read. So that's always interested me. My own mother died when I was quite young, and she really, I have three biological sons. She really didn't know them past their early childhoods. So I had to reinvent her to write this book, but I've always attributed my worst judgments about myself to my mother, and I in some ways have been grateful that she died, because things in my life, the mistakes I've made, I've been glad that she didn't have to know about them.
Another question for you. How long did it take you to write 3 points of view and then edit what you've done?
Yeah, this was a long process writing this book. I mean, it was my first novel. I took a couple of classes in writing the novel. Those turned into writing groups of the students that had been in the class, and we would meet every month and share our writing. Then I went to Montana, where I had 2 full years to work on the book with my fellow graduate students there. Then the book was agented, and the agent had a number of ways that she thought I should tweak it, and I did all of that. So it's continued to evolve and it just become more and more of a finished product over the years.
So how many years total did it take? Or do we not want to know?
85 to 2020, what is that? That's 35 years. But obviously a good many of those years, it was just in the computer. But yeah, it was 3-4 years of more or less steady work to get it written.
And do you have other books in you?
I don't think so. You know, a book is a lot to keep in your mind. There's tremendous amount of detail. This is something I remember from sort of early, when one day I was thinking, I wonder how many named characters a typical book would have. So I wrote down all the characters who had names in my book. I forget how many there were, but there were 3 dogs and 2 of them were named Buttons. I mean, there's just a million ways to get it wrong. I had a friend read it before I got it published not too long back, and she said, well, you've given the defense attorney 2 different names. I mean, it's a lot to keep in your mind. So no, I'm writing my life story just for my family, and I have edited. You mentioned this. These are the books I've helped other writers. You know, I've sort of been a midwife. Can you see these? To different memoirs and so forth. So I've always. I got to let me say this. I have a little company called Pomegranate Inc. Which is like I'm a writing coach, and pomegranate juice is indelible. I love that writing is indelible. Writing is a way, you know, not to disappear, and that's been sort of my passion as a teacher for all grades levels. I've lately been teaching quite a few adults, but when you are good at saying what you mean, you are taken seriously. I think teaching composition is quite a lot like teaching law. You have to really know what you want to say, and you have to say it truly.
You just alluded to the fact that you've worked with new writers. Can you tell me or tell us a little bit about working with new writers or people who want to be writers, and what's the major recommendation that you give to potential new authors?
Well, keep at it, and then I guess I'd say what Bill Kittredge said is write about what you don't dare write about. I mean, sort of get real, huh? If you get real, then everybody will believe you, because it's the straight stuff. So, and I've prided myself. It's certainly not like counseling, but working with another writer and helping them find what they really meant. That's intricate work and takes a good listening, but it's a great privilege. And people used to give me this, the young students, they'd say, how did you know what I meant?
Are you working with any new writers right now?
Well, not literally right now. I have some graduate students. There's a graduate student that's she's getting her doctorate, and I've been helping her. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Getting back to the book that you just read from, is the main character based upon a person in your life?
All 3 of the main characters are based on, well, everybody in the book is based on a character in my life. Absolutely. Yes. I don't know what this questioner meant by the main character.
Yeah.
So I think there are three main characters.
What did you find is the major obstacle in writing your book?
Actually, excuse me, I'm back on the other question.
Okay.
I think that an unnamed character in the book is shame. I mean, really, it's a book about shame, which is such a poisonous, that's pure poison, shame, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but now I wasn't listening to the question you just asked.
What did you find is the major obstacle in writing your book?
Well, I think you have to find the time. This COVID thing is a perfect time to be writing a book because uninterrupted time is what you need. I know that one of my writing teachers, she said, you know, make yourself a space in your study, whatever, maybe put some special icons up, make it almost like a closet, but a place where you are alone with your characters and you can enter that space. And I do remember that when I was in the middle of writing that book, it was in some ways more real to me than my real life. And it kind of got a momentum going, and I could sort of finish one day, and I could see, okay, I know what I'm going to write tomorrow. Although it kind of evolves.
Can you talk about the editing process? You know, I assume, you know, once you write, you do a lot of editing, or is it one shot?
Yeah, editing is I think the heart of everything, because again, it's on all levels. You're trying to decide, now wait, is that really okay? Listen to this. Okay, she sat down. She was sitting down. She tried to sit down. She wished she'd sat down. Sat, that's a boring word. What else could I say? I mean, it's just endless, right? There's that, and then there's like the rhythm of the sentences. Yeah, you can. It's so much fun to get the rhythm of a given sentence right. That's the kind of the. I said the other day, like using an emery board. You know, you start out, you're kind of hacking away at the piece of wood, but when you get to the editing, you're down to the really fine work, which is, and you think, okay, this is, you know, this is getting better. It's getting better. This is really good. Now let's make this part as good as this part.
I've got a couple more questions here for you. Could you comment on what I heard you share once, that each character is, in a sentence, behind bars in a situation of being locked in?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, those bars of, well, certainly Ginger, she's just in jail with her shame. She's just in jail. She's just sealed off from the world because she has this huge secret she's carrying, and so in a way nobody else knows her at all. The grandmother, she's in a gated community. You know, she is living a really unreal life with, or at least this is what her daughter thinks, of privilege and just kind of cosseted, right? And then of course Adam's in a real prison. And how did he get there? Well, he was too proud. He needed money too fast. Yeah.
Another question, were you surprised by anything the characters did or said? Did the characters teach you anything as they emerged?
Well, let me talk about it this way. You know, when I wrote the book, my mother had already been dead a very long time, what, 15, 20 years. And I brought her back to life. And I was, say, in my 40s, and I tried to write from the point of view of a 70-year-old woman. Well, now I'm in my late 70s, and reading it, I hadn't read the book in quite a long time until fairly recently. Rereading it, I thought, oh, you really got her. You really imagined pretty well what it feels like to be 70s.
Mm-hmm. I don't have any other questions on the Q&A. One question that we did get that we haven't answered yet is, where can they buy your books?
Oh, I love that question. Well, I love all the questions. I really do. I'm very honored to be here and to be sharing this. It's been a big part of my life, and this is huge for me to share it with people. My books are available. There's a copy in the Alameda Free Library. When Books Inc. on Park Street reopens, they carry my book, my paperbacks, and it's available as a paperback or an ebook from either barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com.
Okay, and one other feature with the book, we hope that once the library opens, that we'll be able to have a signing and have Helen come and autograph the book. So we will let everybody know when that happens. I did just get another question for you. The questioner says, I noticed that the son Adam and the African-American guy next to him in the solitary cell seem to be groping toward communicating with each other with kindness, somehow beginning to leave shame behind. Is that part of what you had in mind, and did that theme progress?
Oh my God, what a beautiful question. Oh, what a beautiful question. Well, thank you, because first of all, I'm glad that was clear, that they was so intimate there, wasn't it? And but sometimes that's easier to do with a third party, which is a book. And I loved that they were that they were able to have that kind of brotherhood. But then I also, as the book goes on, reading becomes pretty much of a lifesaver for Adam. Oh, I do want to say that it's a very serious book. There's serious trouble in this book, but a lot of it, I think a lot of it is funny. And I mean, even some of what I read, I hope you thought it was funny, because it's a pretty drastic, the contrast between the grandmother and the grandson. But it's also hopeful. Mm-hmm. It's a hopeful book.
We all need that now. One final comment. Well, maybe let me check. Oh no, I've got a couple more for you. One commenter says, "Thanks so much, Helen. I loved hearing you read your book, and as you know, really enjoyed your book, Martha." And then somebody else said, just an FYI for folks who like to buy books from Books Inc. in Alameda, they're taking online orders, and they are offering free shipping via USPS Media Mail. So you can still order the book through Books Inc. So if you've got any last questions, please type them in now. Otherwise, I've finished my questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to say, Helen?
Yes, there is. I hoped to have a chance to say this, that I owe Alameda Unified School District a great debt of gratitude. I began teaching there in 1970, and as an English teacher, we were all part of the Bay Area Writing Project, the early Bay Area Writing Project. And what that was kind of a sisterhood, mostly sisterhood, brotherhood of English teachers, and we would write together, because one of the tenets of the Bay Area Writing Project is that you must, if you're going to give writing assignments to students, you also have to do the assignments, because they're hard.
Yeah.
And you have to appreciate that and understand what it takes. So that was such a nurturing part of my professional life. And we would have different kinds of writing groups within faculties and across the district. And so I'm very, very grateful to the district for that.
Well, thank you. Thanks to everybody for joining us for our first Friends at Home virtual author event. And certainly thanks to Helen for a very inspirational book and for her thoughtful comments about writing and writing in general and writing her book. I also want to remind the audience that we have two other events coming up. We have two docent talks, one on May 27th, with Marsha Holmes talking about something related to desserts. And then we have one on June 10th with Avril, let me get her last name right, Angevine, and both have been speakers for us in the past and do a fantastic job. And Avril is talking about photography. That will be on May 27th and June 10th. And we are working also on two other author events for June and July. So stay tuned. And I want to thank everybody for joining us, and thanks Helen for joining us as well. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. It was really wonderful. Appreciate it. Night, night.